Hey everyone, this is Steve Wiideman from Unbottleneck, the podcast that helps solve common digital marketing problems. And today our guest is Holly Miller-Anderson, an accomplished SEO strategist and professional of digital marketing and public relations. Previously, she was the SEO product manager at Macy's.com and at Bloomingdale's.com, which I am currently a member of. And currently is the SEO manager for SearsPartsDirect.com, overseeing SEO growth for the e-commerce website. And Holly is just married, well, just over a year married,
Still
and
married.
has been moving all over the country. Holly, welcome to the show. Tell us more about yourself.
Thank you, Steve. I'm super excited to still be kind of keeping the momentum with SEO and search. I know a lot happened last year with COVID and the world changing, so it's nice to still connect.
Still
and
happening.
Yeah, it's still evolving, right? But it's good to see you and be able to share some insights since I've kind of moved from one e-commerce platform to another. So hoping to bring some good insights.
Awesome. And before the show, we were talking a little bit about how you and I go back years and years and years in the industry.
Yes.
When did you really get started in SEO?
Oh my gosh. So I first started working at local.com, and it's been resold, since then. But Andrew Shotland was the consultant at that company. So talk about a throwback.
Local search
right?
guide.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was kind of my first foyer into the world. And it was, they called it the teeth whitening ads and the belly fat ads on the page. So learned a lot about, good content, what should be on a page, what people actually search for. But it was super interesting to be part of kind of one of those early directory sites, I guess, post, Yellow Pages and Yelp and all those things. Right. So that was back 2009, I think. Yeah. Wow. I'm old, but not that old.
So I'm turning 45 this year, so I feel like I'm 90. But with local.com and even earlier when you were working with Macy's and Bloomingdale's, was the focus around multi-location search, or was the focus around e-commerce, or did you manage both?
It would depend. With Macy's, they obviously had the retail location, so there was a focus to make sure that people could find the store if they wanted to. Also a big focus on app usage. So even once you were in the store, could you find what you wanted to? I think everyone's been on a retail floor at some point, and it's really helpful when you can look up and see the signs and be like, where's the baby section, or where's the this or that. And so there was an interesting focus, at least when I was there, to try to help the customer navigate the floor print, on the app, just as much as web, as if you were on the website looking for that particular pair of brown shoes, so.
Right. So you had to work with a lot of usability and website specific optimization versus, just trying to rank in a map pack or an organic result.
Exactly. Yeah, I think so being on the product side, we kind of balanced what we were doing for Googlebot to make sure just that the pages were crawled and indexed appropriately, but also working with the product team. So we focused a lot on the PDP pages, or product detail pages, and making sure that we, preserved conversions, and that any optimizations that were done there were to help the customer find what they needed, and to just, get closer to getting them what they were actually looking for. So that was all kinds of things on the page, from UX to breadcrumbs, to how the page was loaded.
Usability testing.
Yeah. So there was a lot.
Accessibility.
I was
totally
not busy.
Were there any sort of, I know I got a ton of questions, and I know today we want to talk about like seasonality and in search, but were there any big wins where you felt like, hey, we did something like add FAQ page markup or something, and all of a sudden, we saw a nice boost in overall organic traffic, especially at the product detail page level, since that was, a big part of what you were working on. Did you notice anything that if somebody said, hey, I just built my Shopify site and I've got a product detail page, and you want to go, oh, I got to give them a couple recommendations, what would those be?
Well, if I'm going to talk about Shopify stuff, I'll go to Kevin Indig, right? he's right. I'll just be like, hey, what do you do on that page? I think for us, it was more about making sure I don't have any full tips for anyone because it was very proprietary, and it was really about
Yeah.
having parity between what was on the
Okay.
mobile web and then what was on the app, because the user doesn't care, right? They're just out there
Right.
searching. They may or may not have the app, and we were trying to increase app downloads. So we were really trying to be aware of the fact of their customer journey and how they would move from a search on the web to then being invited or prompted to open that up in the app, add that into their cart.
Hmm.
So that was a big focus for us in making sure that journey was as seamless as it could be. Um,
Sure.
that being said, I was also working on a project where it did not get launched because this will factor into seasonality. We had a code freeze that we had to adhere to. As you can imagine, Q4
Hmm.
is super revenue focused. So
The MarTech battle.
yes,
Yep.
yeah.
I'm with
So
you.
we built, and then did not get to release the product in time. But it was an SEO optimized reviews page that we were really hoping to launch. It would have incrementally increased or improved
And that's at the subpage level for like locations, or was that just on
off of
e-commerce
the
site?
product page actually. So
Oh
more of
wow,
a
really? Okay.
more of an internal linking play. So kind of a when you see on Amazon, it's very subtle, but it says like see all reviews or see more reviews.
Mm,
It's that link for the bot that then takes you to
gotcha.
a page that's just really streamlined, and title tag reviews on X product, H1s,
Right.
straight crawl of the reviews.
I can't imagine a better way to handle using user generated content to handle
Hmm.
uniqueness, right? Especially when you're using like manufacturer descriptions and have to deal with all sorts of Google Panda penalties and so
Yeah,
forth. To be able to have reviews and have people actually use words that describe the product on the
right.
page, and those reviews get indexed as part of the content on the
Hmm.
page. I can't think of a better way to scale unique content
Yep.
than
Especially
UGC.
for an
Yeah,
e-commerce site where they're not necessarily producing additional review type of content outside of just having reviews on a product page.
right.
So I think more to come on that after the after this recent algo update for sure.
Yeah, that's right. That one that keeps getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. So
Oh,
we'll
well,
see what
that's the Core
happens.
Web Vitals
Yeah.
one. No, the product reviews one was released.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's jump into
Yeah,
our questions.
let's get
I
back on
gotta
track because
crunch
that's
here.
a whole nother topic.
Yeah. All right. So first, we're going to jump into business seasonality, which we already mentioned, and how seasonality SEO works. But can you first identify to our listeners what you consider to be seasonality as it relates to digital marketing? What are the seasons business owners should be paying attention to that affect web search and business performance?
So websites, business owners of all kinds, especially e-commerce sites, really need to be aware of what the consumer's perception of seasonality is. And what I mean by
Hmm.
that is your typical January to December type of holidays, where you've got Christmas, you've got Thanksgiving, Kwanzaa, all of the different sort of holidays that customers get marketed to. There's that kind of sense of underlying seasonality that you have to be aware of.
Right.
But in business, it's the fiscal seasonality, right? The calendar year goes from February to January. So there's a different kind of seasonality for businesses. But it's really important for a business in general to pay attention to what their consumers, what their customers actually perceive as seasonality, and when they're looking for
Right.
the product or service that you're offering, and when it's most relevant for them. So I'll give you an example. Parts Direct is an e-commerce site, but we do not go gangbusters, in December selling, selling tools and products and parts. Our seasonality is more congruent with the weather seasonality, with lawn and garden season. So we're starting to
Right.
peak around this time, kind of summer season. So that's why it's really important when I'm looking at the product roadmap, when I'm building that out, that I'm not necessarily
Right.
looking at, making sure this is launched by, Christmas and we're going to have this in place for the holiday. It's like, nope, that's completely different in this business because of the type of products that we sell. And so that's why
Sure.
businesses really need to be aware of kind of the actual products that they're putting out there, that it may not have anything to do with the typical seasonality that
Holiday or
holidays, yeah,
something.
that
Yeah.
most customers kind of get marketed to or they get used to. Could be very
Right.
different. So it's good to factor in.
Yep. I was was thinking about all those crazy charts that we create in Data Studio and sometimes in Excel. We look at year versus year versus year versus year in one beautiful view, and in doing that, I think it might be enlightening to a business to see what their real seasonality looks like. And yeah, I get it. For a lot of retailers, they're going to see that big pickup around November and December,
Hmm.
maybe even a little bit in January, as the after holiday sales are big. But you're right. There's times of the year that people are going to have an interest where there's no correlation to a holiday or an event. It's just weather. It's just so I think just looking at that, if I were to do one thing for seasonality, it would be to look at the year versus year versus
Hmm.
year. Maybe ignore 2020, right? But
Yes,
go back to like
please do.
2018 and 19.
About,
Yep.
March
And
through, I don't know, how long were we all in shelter in place? Just wipe that out.
yep. Yeah, exactly. Just cut it out. Yeah, I think that's something that I would do, just so you get an idea of it, and when you think about, hey, what am I going to do for seasonality? As things start to come up, you start to think about, well, maybe it's graduations, right? Maybe every year, and it's not so much a holiday, but
It's a
it is
seasonal
something that
thing,
tends to
right?
pick up. Yeah.
Yeah,
So one of the things I noticed Applebee's does is they do a moms, dads, and grads thing,
yeah.
and they offer a bit of a discount on their, if you buy a gift card, you get extra money and
Hmm.
so forth.
Which is
And
great because everyone's
but they
out,
plan,
and they may or may not
yeah,
have made a reservation, but I mean, we'll see what
right,
happens this year, but
yeah, fingers
fingers
crossed.
crossed. Maybe they'll still go.
So
They'll pre-register, and they can get in. But no, that's a
yep,
really good
we'll
point.
see. Yeah. So that's the thinking is, hey, maybe we can put something out. So one of my retail clients, he does a top 10 graduation gifts
Hmm.
thing, and he throws in some things with Rolex watches, which is something he sells, and then he'll use that and do some
Yeah,
PR. So he'll post some research, he'll ask questions, he'll see where there's trends and things, he'll pull some data, and then he'll do this post, and then he'll have somebody on the team who does a lot of what you're doing in like public relations, and do some outreach and say, hey, we did some research and we created this page, the top 10 things based on data.
right.
And that's a cool way to really drive some links to the site, but also as people start to search for, hey, it's graduation, top 10 things for men for graduation,
Hmm.
top 10 things for women for graduation. That content starts to get a lot of traffic, right during that season. And like you're saying, it's not something you take down every
Right,
year. You just continue to nurture it, or if it is something that you don't want to promote for some reason because of holidays, you can sunset the page and say, hey, this deal's not active right now, but it will be again next
right.
year. Put in your email address to get alerted when it will go
Yes.
live. That way you don't lose all those great links that you earned to that
Exactly.
page.
Well, it's almost like a Black
So,
Friday page where people used to be
yeah.
like, well, do I update it, my URL with the year? And what do we do with all this information to make our Black Friday page rank? You're like, just keep it
Hmm.
up, just leave it up and,
Yep.
continue to have it indexed, build a new one or build out, an extension of it. But it was almost like
Yep.
the more legacy the page was, the more clout it would
Hmm.
have as you kind of circled back to that time of year. But yeah, that's
Yep.
a really good best practice, especially if you're going to take advantage.
Stop taking down your
Yeah,
pages.
leave them up. They're like fine wine.
So Applebee's had 15 different URLs for their Veterans Day when we started working with them. 15, and all of them were 404. And there were over 5,000 links that were pointing to those 404
Wow.
pages. So we created one sort of evergreen permanent
Right. Yep.
URL. 301 redirected all those old
Yeah.
pages, and we reclaimed over 5,000
Yeah.
links in the day.
Consolidate that
So
authority.
stop moving your
Yep.
pages.
Well, stop moving them, but do it in the right way, like you mentioned. I mean, that's a much
Yeah.
better play than to take down a single page and think that you're going to
Hmm.
just build a new one, 3 months before the actual holiday. It's like, you need that out there working for
Right.
you a lot longer than you think.
That's a perfect way to handle seasonality from an SEO standpoint. I think
Hmm.
is I know you're a lot of business owners are thinking, hey, I'm going to do Christmas dash 2021 for this year as a URL. No, don't do that. Just do
Just do Christmas,
Christmas,
right?
right? And keep that page evergreen. Sure, change 2020 to 2021 in your title
Right. Your
tag
meta
or your heading.
description,
You know,
yeah.
keep that URL static. Otherwise, you're going to end up with like 50 of them over the next 50
Yep. And
years.
make sure to refresh the graphics and the content so it doesn't feel old.
Oh yeah, right. or do that sunset thing. If it's going to end after the end of the month, put up a little light box and fade the background a bit, and that light box says opt in, if you want to get
Yeah,
notified when
for
this
next
page
year.
is live again, that way the URL is
Yep,
still there.
exactly.
All right, next question. Many SEOs value the rollout of an SEO roadmap to their clients, us included. Those critical itemized tasks and action items are for properly implementing search engine strategy for a website and digital marketing campaign. Can you walk us through your best vision of how we can build an effective SEO roadmap and what's typically involved and maybe who's needed to help implement?
Sure. It's funny, I've actually had the chance to do this in sort of two capacities. One, as kind of being on the consultant side or being inside of an agency and you're building the roadmap for your client. And then
Yep.
also being in house, I got to create the roadmap this time, which was super fun. But I
Right on.
think
Did you see Aleda's, by the way? Aleda did one recently
I
that was really
hadn't.
neat, the way she
No, is
curated.
it on her
So
her
cool.
full rollout? That site is amazing.
I
Learn
think so. Yeah, I'll send you a link after.
learnseo.io.
But yeah, it was cool. Actually, we'll post it in the
Yes,
comments so everybody can see it. Really
definitely.
neat
Yeah,
little roadmap.
shameless plug for what she's building. It's amazing. Um, so what I usually try to do, being an in-house person right now, I try to stack up things like what's the business landscape, right? So what
Yep.
do I, as the product owner or the roadmap owner, what do we need to have live by a certain time frame, so that based on the seasonality of what we've learned about our customers and kind of the market, when do
Sure.
we need to be ready to take advantage of what they're searching for?
I mean, you don't just dump all the tasks that you want to do in the next year to your
I
developer
mean,
and say these need
I
to happen
try,
now.
right click, sort by, alphabetize. No, I'm kidding. I tried that, hasn't worked.
Yep.
Um,
No, it never works. Yeah.
so yeah, the business landscape, just basically knowing when you're going to have profitability and what features you
Mhm.
really think you want to have ready and in production, is a good
Sure.
lens to kind of build your. I call it a product roadmap now. It's an SEO roadmap, but you are owning a product at the end of the day. People are searching for something; they want a good product or a service. So I think it's important to call it a product roadmap as much as possible.
Interesting.
Business resources. So you want to look at, what do you have at your disposal? Do you have an agency that's working with you? Do you have enterprise, consulting service hours through, some of the bigger tools that are out there? Bright Edge, Search Metrics, Conductor. They're really, really helpful in
Yep.
kind of helping you distill down what's going on with your data and your rankings. It can help you understand what you should be prioritizing in your roadmap. But they're also a good resource for measurement as well. So once you launch something, you can kind of go back to them and say, help me understand the impact. Um, and your internal resources. So, do you have access to the content team? How much of the development resource roadmap do you actually own or control or influence?
Yep.
Sometimes you have to balance that. The Jira sprints with work that has to go across the org. So it's not just SEO work. If you're lucky enough to get SEO work in there, it's not just SEO work. So
That's why they call it MarTech now,
yeah,
right? And SEO
exactly.
sometimes just gets thrown into the
Yep.
mix because it's marketing and it's technology. And a lot of times the dev folks will put SEO kind of on the back burner to bugs and fixes. So sometimes it could be months before your task of updating an XML sitemap or something even gets addressed.
Potentially.
Yeah.
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 And that's one of those things, is that for me, one of the things that I do when I'm looking to put together a roadmap is I do kind of a mini audit on the site. And so I'll
Mhm.
identify, kind of like you would when you look at a patient. You're like, okay, where are we bleeding like excessively? Where do we need to really fix the problem here so that the patient is, whole, and we're put together, we're functioning, and then we can go from there and move on to the pieces that are,
The quick
yes,
wins.
more or less quick
Yeah.
wins. I hate saying that because they're not quick.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a balance, right? But I think you can't not address the things that are really glaring, or make sure that you're bringing those things back onto the roadmap to continue to address. We certainly had to factor in core web vitals this year. So when I
Everybody
yeah, so
did.
I mean, I
And
joined.
anyone who's doing digital marketing knows about Core Web Vitals now. If they don't, they've
I thought
got to
that's what our
jump on
topic
it.
was
Yeah.
today. No, I'm kidding. It certainly was something where we still had to prioritize, but I'm really proud of the team, and fortunate to be able to have a voice in the organization for SEO to say we should be doing this. This is table stakes essentially. I know this sounds like a new thing, and we can worry about it, we can not worry about it, but at the end of the day, some of it is foundational. It's just a good user experience. Does your page
It's
load
not an
correctly?
SEO thing as much as it is about a user
Right.
experience thing, and that's why I think they're calling it the page experience update.
Yep. Subtle. So see what you did there, Google.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so and it's a lot of it's just so technical. I know as we think about like, our roadmaps, not all we do is consult, thankfully. We don't do a lot of hands-on work, but we will once in a while jump in if clients like, okay, it's been 6 months, just give us access. We'll go in and do it, but don't tell anybody. Um,
Right.
but um, but we think about it like, okay, well, we've got technical, we've
Hmm.
got content or contextual, we've got some off page, and in a lot of cases with some of our franchises we work with, we've got location based, and we
Right.
tend to break our roadmap into those different
Yep.
pieces. And then there's somebody who, like you said, is like a product manager for each of those.
Hmm.
So that person has to make sure the web team, if and when and ever they can get access to them, can work through and prioritize those tech tasks. The content team, hey, we've got some pages that used to do really well for us, and now they're just not getting any traffic. Let's revisit those
Hmm.
first, and then let's come up with some of the new ideas based on what's working for our competition. And I love that Search Metrics gives you a lot of that data too. So does, as you mentioned,
Hmm.
Conductor and some of those other enterprises. For small businesses, you can get a lot of the information that those bigger tools give you from like
Yep.
SEMrush and
SEMrush is great.
Ahrefs, and and then yeah. So I think from a product roadmap standpoint, that segmentation, can be really
Hmm.
important. And it sucks for those like small businesses are like, well, I'm all those roles, right? Like when I put a little org chart together, when I get asked, hey, who do I need to hire to do SEO? I'm like, well, you need an SEO manager, you need a PPC person, you need
An analyst.
a content writer, you need a webmaster, you need a local SEO person, you need a web analyst. And they're like, yeah, I'm just going to do pay per click.
Or I'm just going to go on Clubhouse and see how it goes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, but that's how we started, right? Like you and I, we were all those
Hmm.
roles. We had to be the split personality of the introverted technical person and the behavioral science writing person who understands sales principles and long form casual content, and also be able to be extroverted and be able to pick up the phone and send emails to get other websites to link
Right.
to ours. So
Yeah.
to and analytical to measure the data. So it's like you got to be all these personalities, and I guess that's why there's so few of us that that do all of those different things, and
Probably.
why an org chart is so important.
That's true. That's true. I hope to be able to train more people on, kind of the cross disciplinary things in marketing,
Yeah.
because it's really unique. I think you need people with deep expertise in all those different areas, but you also kind of need someone to guide the team and lead from a kind of that top level perspective.
Yep.
One of the things that comes to mind about what you're saying is like, uh, be concrete, or be aware of where you want to get to, of what the outcomes are going to be. So
Mhm.
have really clear outcomes, but be open to how you get there. And so
Right.
you can constantly be moving pieces of your roadmap around, but ultimately whether you know so like an example is you're trying to just drive top of funnel content. Okay, well, we can do that in a
Mhm.
number of different ways, but maybe one of the biggest drivers is to for me to partner with the PR and the content team, so that we can build some great
Right.
content and get it placed in some publications, so that we're actually driving links and awareness back to the site. And it's just like, that's not a pure SEO play, but that's something that's really going to help drive your top of funnel goal. And so just
Absolutely.
kind of being open
Yeah.
to different groups and teams that you work with. You may have similar goals, and so be in communication with what their priorities are, what their projects are, because you may be able to dovetail, and both be able to get something done.
Oh yeah. There's so much data we can share between
I
teams.
know, I know.
It's amazing how many paid search specialists just do not collaborate with the SEO specialists to learn from
I
each other.
I
Like,
go and
I've,
collaborate with them on my own. I'm like, hi, nice to see you. Hey, it's me.
like I go to the PPC person. I'm like, could you give me all your top converting search queries so that I can make my page get
Better.
more organic traffic? And hey, could you tell me what placements are really getting the most conversions so that I can figure out
Mm-hmm.
how we can get some links from those pages? And what's fun is when you take your search console and you drill into like one URL, like you're talking about that product detail page,
Mm-hmm.
and you go to the search console and you pull all those search terms, you get rid of the ones that are just obviously not
Right.
relevant, and you put them in exact match in your ad group to that URL. it's like quality scores go from like 6 to 9 and 10. And it's like
Oh,
instantly because they're all like perfectly matched to that page because Google organically has been
right. That's what
showing
they
them.
think
And
that page
I
ranks
don't know.
for. So yeah, it's like you can kind of
I
go like
love that.
this,
That's my favorite
with
thing.
your strategy. That's really cool. I like that.
But why they never talk is I don't know if it's just different personalities. So you're right. I think there really needs to be a Holly at the top of the org chart, sort of orchestrating all these things between the different team members because you get so tunnel
Yeah.
visioned on what
People are
you're doing that
busy.
you
You got
forget that there's a
goals.
lot of data going on outside of
Yeah.
your little bubble.
But it's contextual data too, which is really interesting. And
Yeah.
that again, that kind of goes back to our thread line about seasonality, right? You've got paid people that are like doing their thing and they're bidding, but they need to be aware that there's something else going on in the world. Stimulus checks just dropped, or graduation season is coming up, So and people are not functioning in the way that they have been. So you can't just maybe drive traffic to to drive it to a location. You're like, let's think about this for a minute. How many people are they taking into the restaurant right now? Do they need to pre-book? Is it, do they have ample seating outdoor and indoor? So there, you don't have to potentially do all that work, but if it is your client, you might want to think about it because that can inform your paid strategy a little bit more
Hmm.
than you might have thought.
And help with planning for
Mm-hmm.
sure. I was actually um, ready to pack my desk up the day that Michael Jackson died because I didn't know what had happened, and all of a sudden my traffic was just dead, and I'm like, oh, I'm losing my job. Something's wrong. Something's totally wrong. And then someone's like, did you hear Michael Jackson died? And I'm like, oh, that's
That's
what's
yeah.
happening. I thought I broke something
Yeah,
because it was
no one's
that
online
it was that
anymore. Like,
significant. Yeah, and you can't plan for that because that's not seasonality. That's just something going on in the
yeah.
world. So it's one of those things where, what's the plan B when that happens? Do we amp up paid to try to get more of the real estate of what limited is available,
Yeah.
or those are more reactive things. But we're going back to road mapping, and I know there's so many different approaches, right? There's that segmentation based on your discipline in the
Hmm.
organization. Um, there's a project manager whose job is to sort of look at all the things that are going on and the resources that need to be
Yeah.
assigned to get stuff to work. Um, you mentioned earlier the value of achieving like balance between that long-term roadmap, maybe 3 to 6 months of development work with a short-term plan, like around content optimizations that could be made, based off those changing
Yeah.
seasons. When you think about it from the beginning, say January 1st, all the way to the end of the
Hmm.
year, what do those optimizations look like in general? And did you said you were using Jira as sort of a way to plan for those in advance? What's that look like in terms of a roadmap?
So one thing I'll certainly say is, whenever you're getting into an organization, know what their deadlines are internally for their business seasonality, and that's going to be really important for your roadmap. And I say that because when I was at Macy's, we had a hard deadline, so we had to stop pushing anything live to the site. It was a code freeze that we had to respect from pretty much October through end of January. And so, yeah, so that
Right during, oh my God, right during like the holiday
well, and that's
season.
to protect the site. They don't want any code changes. They don't want anything that they have to fix during the moment when we're getting the heaviest impact on our servers and people are,
Right.
moving through the site. So it's too much of a risk. But so what that means is you really need to be aware of that type of hard line in the sand from the dev teams, from the technology leadership, because that means you need to back out from there, and your roadmap, kind of whether you're sliding, on, I like to say like 3 months or kind of 6 months of project planning, that backs out from there. Um, and again, that's just due to your business and kind of the business seasonality.
Right.
With parts, I started in October, so and I knew we didn't have any hard lines in December. We didn't have typical holiday seasonality. We were trying to build and get things out there basically right around March, before March, and this was before we knew about Core Web Vitals, but we hadn't really started prioritizing those on the roadmap just yet to be worked on. But so, again, going back to the mini audit of your site, where you really figure out kind of from a stack rank where should we be focusing on, from the technical standpoint first, and then kind of moving into content to support those things.
And then get it scoped with the dev team so that you don't
Right,
say, well, we're not blocking out till October, so let's give it to them September
right.
15th. And the dev team's like, this is going to take us 2 months, and so we're going to do it in
Yep.
February.
Bring things to the team as early as possible. Try to have them scope things out so that you get a sense of how long it's going to take, because you may have it on your roadmap, but all the other pieces that need to come together, the other teams that you need information from, databases, they've all got their own roadmaps as well. So depending on the size of the organization, it gets a little more nuanced and complicated. But
Right.
that's kind of that's how you want to look at things. And I'll show you. This is my trick. I'm gonna actually give you sort of the answer, the cheat sheet to what I do. This is what I use.
Nice.
This is
A
a
calendar. I've seen
calendar.
those
This is
before.
just from Franklin Covey. I love that brand. They're so old, but I love them.
Yeah.
I have started. I charted out by color the
Okay.
different sprints that we were on, so the different releases, and I can quickly look at this and say, okay, I've got 2 or 3 more sprints left within these 3 months. Here's where we're tracking on something, so that I can at least kind of give that back to the dev guys and say, here's what I'm thinking, we might want to get this done. What's the reality, or what are you facing? What challenges are in your way? But
Yeah.
that has been just kind of like a really great North Star for me, is like the holistic calendar of where we're sitting right now, how many months are left. You can draw
Mhm.
lines around your own quarters.
If you
It's
don't
great.
do that, you'll blink your eyes and be like, "Oh my God, it's already been 2 months now. I
Yeah.
can't get this stuff done." I love
It
that idea.
helps
Just
with the
take a simple calendar
360.
and highlight
Yeah,
out those
you can
sprints.
see, you can see the bird's eye view of like, where are we in the middle of the year? Where's everything? And then zoom right in into the week and say, is this moving as quickly as we need it to, or does this project need to shift a little bit more? So that's my pro tip for
I
you.
love it. That's so genius. And
It's so nerdy.
it comes down to just using it. It's just using a calendar, and it's a simple thing. You don't need some sophisticated online software, or SharePoint or anything, or Microsoft project. You just kind of keep it simple and keep your eye on the
Yep.
ball. I love it. Next question? What are some common mistakes that business owners are making most often when it comes to optimizing with seasonality in mind?
Man. So one of the biggest mistakes is the business owners are making is thinking that their seasonality, or the business's seasonality,
Mhm.
is what the customer thinks of as seasonality. So not really putting yourself
Okay.
in the customer's shoes. Again, just understanding of when they're
Forgetting about the buyer journey a bit.
right. When are they actually looking for your product? When do they need it? Don't just think about seasonality in terms of January to December, kind of typical
Right.
holidays that fall on a calendar. Um, so, not being, and everyone says they're customer focused, but that really does come into play at that moment. You really do have to be uh, aware enough as a brand to say, we actually, drive more traffic in July. So maybe that's our Christmas holiday, or, the thing that we need to be driving towards. Um,
So look at their own data, basically, like go into
mhm.
analytics and
Definitely look at
kind of
your
get a feel
data.
for it.
Yes. But overlay it
And you have
with,
what, 16 months of data in Search Console too, so you can actually see the words that they're using to get to your
yes,
website,
that's
which is
that's
cool.
good. And then Google Trends as well. So you also want to kind of get the full scope of like, just what is this term? What is this topic? What's the interest over time of the topic in general? Because you want to know that the demand is still out there.
Mhm.
And in addition to kind of what your own seasonality is, what the data is showing you on your charts. Um, Mistake number two. Let's see, what did I write over here? Uh, Not baking in extra time to releases. They will never happen exactly on time. So
That was the one that was in the
give
back of my
yeah,
mind
just
was the
give it a
time
little bit of
factor.
extra time. It's probably just going to take time, or bake in extra time during your QA process. As much as you try, nothing is ever fully released on time. There's little bugs. There's just things to pick up. So you just have to plan for that. Another mistake is trying to release a really, really, really big feature, like pushing out big features. I'm more of a fan of the MVP, so kind of breaking it down and saying, this is the whole feature, but we want to launch this version first, and then we're going to
Mhm.
measure and test, and this is the next version, and then the next. And so you kind of,
So that way it doesn't drag out forever
right.
trying to launch something. Instead, you launch it in pieces. I love that. That's so
Yep.
smart.
Also known as, what do they call it? How to eat an elephant, or how to move a mountain, right? You don't move the entire mountain. You do it one piece at a time.
I can tell you, we actually had that same problem with Applebee's. We had this amazing design for the local landing page, but it had all these new elements and features and pictures and things that, that all required discussion. And so it literally took like over a
Right,
year to get anything to move. And so we finally said, you know what, let's just take the current page and let's add a
right,
row the next quarter, right? In the next sprint, if
right.
you will.
Yeah,
Let's add this other tile, and then we realized by piecemealing it that way, we got all the features, well, a lot of the features that we
right.
wanted without overwhelming and trying to do it all
That's
at
really
once.
great.
That's
I would
awesome.
add on to that, use heat maps. Use heat mapping data to
Right.
really see where people are spending their time on the page and what can be improved. And that's a really quick, easy way to kind of settle discussions about like, well, what can we do? It's like, let's test it. Look, everyone's hovering over
Build a
here.
business case.
I have
Love
a
it.
bias to
All right.
action. So,
Next question. You ready?
yes.
What's the biggest dare or challenge you pose for business owners who are looking to rock their seasonal SEO, maybe for the first time
Oh
ever?
man, if you want to rock your seasonal SEO, lean into video, lean all the way in. So my theory,
Video's causing core web vital update problems, though,
well,
right?
publish it on YouTube and then
There
make
you go.
YouTube handle
Okay,
all
fair enough.
the heavy page load. No, I think there's more than one way to skin that cat, and for me,
Yeah.
video is kind of the barrier to entry to generational marketing. It's I actually went to film school, so I really enjoy
All right.
when you can put together visual storytelling, whether it's just someone a day in the life of, and they're moving through and solving problems, or you're out man on the street interviewing someone. The production value
Mhm.
doesn't have to be amazing. I know people get really intimidated when you see a lot of like brand content that gets put out there,
Or
but
influencers doing
yeah, like
things, yeah.
sometimes it fails. Like sometimes big brands are tone deaf. And so I think the more you can really lean into video and understand your audience and their
Mhm.
visual tendencies and preferences, I think the more you'll learn how to win in that regard.
That's awesome. I know we used to have that as part of our page level recommendations. Like, hey, if we want to have more unique content than our competition, let's add
Mhm.
video. And then in the video on YouTube, we would link back to the page itself, even though it's a link that Google's not going to pass any page rank through. We still saw a bit of a correlation, and our page would show up in search results with the video
That's
thumbnail.
what's
Not
that's
the
what you
YouTube,
see.
but
You've got
the
SERP
video
space. Yeah,
page.
that's
Yeah.
pretty big.
So there's so much value to video, and I think if Google were to look at two pages and say, okay, this one has the same H1, same
Hmm.
H2, these same headings and subheadings, same image names, same bullet list, everything is basically the same, just written differently and with different content. Which should I rank? Well, this one also offers a video, and people
Right.
are staying on this page a little bit longer and not going back to my results and choosing a competing listing. Maybe this page was more
Hmm.
helpful. So I found that almost every single time if we added a video. But I've noticed with some of these mobile changes and things that have happened over the last 2 or 3 years that putting video up at the top isn't as helpful and isn't helping SEO as much. It seems like if we put the video a little bit lower on the
Midway
page
through.
so that
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like which is a bummer because that's the best content. You want them to see the video first,
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, users aren't responding when it's right there at the top. But
You have to be careful.
anyway,
You have to understand how to answer the question. And I think people,
yeah,
they take it, so another mistake, I guess. They'll have their intro content, headline,
mhm,
and then video. And it's like you saw recipes doing this a lot, and you're like, I don't need your whole intro about your grandmother and the backstory. Like, I need you to start with the recipe. Whereas what you're saying, where
yeah,
starting with the video was kind of like a little too much. So I think there's good research that can be done, user research to figure out, how to start the page and when to sort of pop into the video. When do they actually want to watch?
right.
To learn more about the answer that they're researching or the product itself.
Yeah, and it doesn't take long to test if you're getting enough traffic to the
Hmm.
page. Throw the different video versions up and see, watch your stats for that
Yep.
page and see how people respond. I think get 2 or 3 versions and rotate them out for a week, over a course of a month, and you'll have 4 different tests
Yeah.
to decide, hey, which version of this video was really effective.
And actually,
Yeah.
another pro tip, I've seen people break out the video. So if you have a 5-minute video, rather than just having that, in there, you break it out, and so you almost like when you're reading your content, it looks like a slide, but it's part of the video, but it's only 30 seconds of it, or it's a minute, and it very specifically talks about the section that they're referencing. So,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
very
I've never
very
seen that.
interesting
Sounds
way
cool.
to kind of take the whole video itself, but break it down because people skim a page when they're first,
Mhm.
looking at it, and maybe they're going to pop into the video section that they think is most valuable to them, as opposed to, reading through the entire thing. So
It's
yeah,
really
very
smart.
interesting.
I love that.
Yep.
So I think our key takeaways and for businesses that are thinking about seasonality, start with, of course, actually having a calendar and paying attention to when things happen, looking at your data and not just at the holiday calendar,
Mm-hmm.
planning well in advance, keeping one URL for recurring promotions instead of creating a new one every year. Um, and what else? What else do you think is a key
Oh my
takeaway
gosh,
for those who
I
are
forgot
listening?
to mention this, but depending on where your dev teams are located, you should really be
Yeah.
aware of the cultural and religious holidays that your
Oh
teams may be
yeah.
observing. I happen to work with a lot of teams in India, and they
Hmm.
take off time, in November for
Yeah.
Diwali and big holidays. So that's a key piece to kind of make sure you're factoring in is just people's time off in general, but also when it kind of impacts the larger team just based on a holiday that they've earmarked. So work that into your roadmap.
That
That'll
makes a lot of sense.
help you to avoid, planning for something in November when you think it's a quiet time
Right.
and no one's
Right.
there.
Hey, Fourth of July is coming up, and we've got this big thing we're going to do. We're really excited, and the dev team comes back and says, "Yeah, we're off that
Right.
month."
We're
So
traveling. We're not, yeah,
what?
we're not in.
Yeah,
So
what do we do?
yeah, just circulate
That's
calendars
smart.
and, ask early and often to make sure people are there.
I love it. Well, I got some lightning round questions.
Let's
You
do
ready
it.
for them?
Let's do it.
All right. Number one, what is your favorite SEO
Oh
tool?
my gosh. Um,
It's like who
who
am
am
I
I
going to
gonna?
get
Yeah,
in
who am I
trouble
gonna
with if
give
I
credit
mention
to?
this?
I will give a small nod to, I think it's Keywords Everywhere. I installed that plugin,
Okay.
and it's fascinating. Yeah, super
I love
interesting.
how it overlays on your data. That's so cool. Like Search Console. Oh my God, look at all the stuff I'm getting out of Search
Yeah,
Console now.
very. I don't pay for the tool. I'm sorry. I probably should. But yeah, really really interesting peek at some of the
Okay.
keywords on the SERP.
I love it. Who are the SEOs that we should be following if we're a small business and we're thinking about, hey, we want to learn from other SEOs? Obviously, we want them to follow you, but who else? Who do you recommend? Who do you follow that might be helpful for a business that really wants to get into
I
SEO?
love it. Follow Wideman Consulting Group.
Weedman.
Weedaman, excuse me,
Yeah,
sorry.
sure.
Um,
Yeah.
I hope you would follow me because I try to, retweet and share a lot of folks that I found really helpful over the years. Certainly, Alita has a really wonderful website. I hope you guys can kind of link that up. She's been consolidating a lot of great articles from other SEOs, but really distilling
She's
it
so
down.
amazing at international
Yeah,
too. I love
she's
her international
she's
content.
amazing. She's a little
It's great.
fireball. I love her. But she's kind of
Yeah.
broken it down. So you'll find a lot of great people based on kind of the topic research that she's put together there. I mean, I'm always a fan of, AJ Kahn,
Uh-huh.
Andrew Shotland. A lot of the Bay Area search folks
Andrew's a great, yeah. If
are
you're
great.
doing local search, if you're trying to get your business, your brick and mortar business to show up in the maps, Andrew's like the perfect guy to follow. He's got tons of great content,
Yep.
and yeah, I agree. I've been following him for
Yep.
years. He's in my local SEO expert
Go
list,
to.
right?
Yes. Yeah. I've
If we're doing Twitter lists, right? And is that still a thing? I don't know. I haven't updated mine in a while.
I get added to those, but I haven't started any.
All right, next question. What's the biggest SEO myth that drives you crazy?
That people automatically think that they think they're being impacted by an algorithm update just because one has been released, and that drives me
Mm,
crazy because it's misinformation, and without really being able to look at the data and diagnose, where we're hitting a traffic impact, or where rankings are
they
dropping.
jump to
Yeah,
conclusions.
yeah, jumping to conclusions, being like an algorithm update is how we're being impacted. It's like, do you know what it's about? Do you know what it's targeting? Do you know, like, have we looked at our pages and kind of made a diagnosis about site wide, what's going on with our competitors? Like, there's a lot involved there. It's fortunately or unfortunately, it's not an automated process. I enjoy it, but I do just like when you have to kind of, hold people down for a second and say, just hold on, let's make an educated guess about this, not jump to
Take a breath.
conclusions.
Yeah, take a breath. Let's look at what's going, what pages were
Right.
impacted. Yeah, I love it. All right. So next question I had was, what's the one I had on local search? So if I were a local business and I wanted to show up in Google Maps, what would be the fastest way that I could appear higher for a non-branded keyword in the Google Map or three pack? If you could do one thing, what fast one thing would you do to try to move my
The
rankings
first thing
up?
is claim your Google My Business listing. I
Oh yeah,
can, some people don't
I love
claim it, and
it.
I'm like, you should be there. Um, it sounds bad, but I would say try to get customer reviews, and you shouldn't be, or you can't be paying for those. But I have done a couple reviews, for wedding dress cleaning, local websites, things like that, and those seem to be doing really, really well. So thorough user generated content. And so I think what works really well there is if you can really, write a nice letter, say, we really enjoyed, your customer service and helping you, would really enjoy if you could answer, these types of questions, and try to have them not be yes, no answers, so that you get more of a rich
Right.
piece of feedback and content. And I think that seems to do really well to
Guided
get,
review
yeah,
requests. I
to
love
get you
that.
on
So
the
saying
map.
leave us a review. Tell them what you want them to
Hmm.
say. That is cool. I like that
Yeah.
idea. Um, all right, next one. This is the last one.
Okay.
What is your favorite or best link building technique for a small business, not necessarily an enterprise where Macy's has relationships with other big brands and can get links through those relationships. But if you're a small business and you're like, I'm not getting any links to my website, what's your best sort of strategy for local business to
So
earn
this
links?
goes back to kind of the storytelling days in journalism. Do roundup posts. Do expert roundup content.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you will, by nature of that, you will get a lot of other links. You will be interviewing other people, getting their bios, and I think people like to see that. They like to see different perspectives, kind of in one place. So if you do it thoughtfully, you have a vehicle of content to be able to link out to five other people in your industry, business owners, and that content can actually have legs beyond a single
Yeah. So if you're a
post.
florist, you
Hmm.
could go to actual gardening experts.
Right.
We asked 10 gardening experts how to keep your roses gorgeous all
Yeah.
year round,
Or go
and
to a
here's what we
grocery
got.
store too and say, what's the difference between, how do you, as a grocery store person, keep your flowers fresh as opposed
Yeah,
to a local grower or someone else who's in a farmer's
right.
market? Like, get that perspective. And I think that's going to create an interesting piece of unique content for people to read, and hopefully share more links out there. But it's a,
I get a lot of grief from doing roundups when I'm asked for questions. Like it takes me 10 minutes to write an answer to something. I don't
mhm.
care if it's on a page that's not going to get a lot of traffic or whatever. It's, something that it could have benefit, it could not, but at least, it's just 10 minutes of my time. But I know a lot of us SEOs look at those roundups and we're like, "Oh, not another
But
roundup,"
for small
right?
businesses, that's a key. Like that is the
Yeah.
low. It's community, and it's
Mhm.
really getting down to the person that is the Jack and the Jill on the street. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that enterprises get away from a little bit. But with local, you have that ability. The person that's walking down the street, what they might encounter, what might be interesting to them, and so seeing that little boutique on the corner shop, when they read that article, they're like, oh, I know that place. Yeah, that's great. They may not know the owner, but they know the location. And so for local SMBs, your roundups are a really quick win way to get your content out there.
I love it. That's a genius idea. Well, Holly, this has been
I
awesome.
know.
And so you're still working with Sears at the moment. So you're not doing any freelance work, or anyone who's listening couldn't call
You
you and
can,
say,
you can
"Hey, could
always,
you?"
I really enjoy it. I don't take on, a ton of clients, because I do have a
Sure.
full-time job, But I really
Yeah.
enjoy, the ability to get a different perspective on a different industry.
Oh, you're gonna get
Yeah,
flooded. You don't know what you're getting
DMs are
into.
open. No, I love it. It's just fascinating. That's how you stay, that's how you stay on
Sure.
top of things, is solving other interesting problems in other industries. Because that's
Yeah.
what Google's trying to do too. They have all these different industries that they have to figure out, and people that are gaming one system or another. And so I think for me, the broader your experience, kind of the better you'll be at bringing that information to the table and saying, I've seen this pattern before. Here's what I think we can try.
I love it. Well, what's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you if they wanted to follow up and ask more seasonality
Aren't you
questions
taking
or
all my
SEO?
calls, Steve?
Yeah, of course. Definitely we'll get three-way calls going. We'll make it work.
You can reach me on Twitter or on LinkedIn.
Sweet. Awesome. And I'll put the links for everybody too in
Thank
the
you.
and on the page. And guys, this has been a lot of fun. I don't know if you enjoyed it as much as I did. This has been really exciting talking about seasonality and something that we neglect to think about every year. Hopefully, some businesses get something out of putting a better plan together, and maybe in 2022 make a little bit more revenue from planning ahead for
Yep,
seasonality.
that's
Ollie,
right.
thank you so much for being on the show today, and I definitely look forward to chatting a little bit more offline. And we'll talk again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Definitely. Thanks.